Hang on a minute. Okay, here we go in 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everybody. This is Greg Anderson. We are about ready to start our webinar. Steve Anderson is standing in the wings, ready to go to teach us why team members fail, secrets of success for the dental team member who wants to ensure more career and financial security, and we look forward to it. Just a few brief announcements as we get started. First, all of you who are participating offices in Smiles for Life should have, if you were participating with a local charity, you should have your local charity check in hand. If that is not the case, we have mailed them and they have been gone for about 2 weeks. You ought to contact us today and let us know that you do not have it so that it can be reissued. The second thing is we are looking forward to the Crown Council's 21st annual event, which will be right here in Salt Lake City, Utah, where I make my home and our Crown Council team is centered. We have had such an overwhelming response to the annual event that we have gone to the hotel and arranged for 200 additional seats. And we hope that that will provide enough room for everybody who would like to come. We promise you an absolutely extraordinary experience. Being here where we live allows us to do some things at the annual event that we are not able to do when we take the show on the road, and we're grateful to be back here for the first time in about 13 years and hope that you and your teams will join us. If you have any young doctors in your practice, those that have been in practice 5 years or less, we make a special invitation to them, and I'd appreciate you sending me a note, a private email to greg@crowncouncil.com with their name and an email address so I can contact them directly. Finally, we have just had returned from Guatemala and the Dominican Republic 2 groups of humanitarians. We had them out at the same time, a group of about 35 in Guatemala and a group of about 35 in the Dominican Republic. This was our first trip into Guatemala, where we are hoping to create the same kind of atmosphere and program that we have been running in the Dominican Republic for the last 9 years. But what that means is that we are going to expand our humanitarian trips each year from 3 to 4, meaning that we have room each year now for another 50 people to join us on a trip either into Guatemala or into the Dominican Republic. And we invite you to have that conversation with Erin in our office, Erin@crowncouncil.com, E-R-I-N, and see when it might be a good time for you and your team to enjoy that life-changing experience. Roy Hammond told me the first time that I went that it would change my life, and I can tell you that it truly has. That's all the announcements. Steve, we look forward to having you teach us this morning, and I will let you loose.
Perfect. Sounds good. Good day, everybody. Great to be with you, and looking forward to the next few minutes together. Just as a reminder, you're in listen-only mode. That means that you should be able to hear me loud and clear. We can't hear you. You're in mute. So if you have any questions during the presentation, you're welcome to enter those in the question box in your control panel on your computer, and we will address those at the end of the formal presentation. So, why team members fail? We're going to deal with 2 models today and 3 action items that you'll get as a result of what we're going to talk about today. And if I can qualify the definition of a team member, so a team member is going to be really anybody who works on the team, regardless of your job title. So that team member includes the dentist. So if your dentist thought that he or she could opt out today because it said team member, go grab them. tell them that this is for them as well. We're going to record this, and it'll be available at crowncouncil.org later today, so any team members who missed it can view it as well. On your screen, you have a model that you should be pretty familiar with if you spend any time with me at all. And this is just as a reminder of the context of what we talk about. So we are always looking for better results, personally as well as professionally. And when we get better results, typically it's because we've taken some type of action to get those results. And usually we spend 80% of our time bouncing back and forth between those two things. What action do I need to take to get better results? Every once in a while we spend some time on the overall strategy or plan, kind of the big picture. Very seldom do we spend time on really looking at the values and beliefs that we have, and almost never do we talk about the natural laws or truths that are at the foundation of all of those beliefs. So as you know, we always like to start at the foundation and talk about what the truths are, natural laws upon which we can build good solid beliefs and values, strategy and a plan, good actions to get the results that we want. So keep that in mind as we move through what we'll talk about today in terms of success principles for any team member. So what are the two things that really cause team members to fail? There's really two primary things: financial insecurity and emotional insecurity. So when I'm not sure where my next paycheck's coming from, and I'm not sure about the success of the organization that I'm working in, then I'm going to be very insecure. If the treatment or the relationship that I have with the people I'm working with is not solid, isn't good, then there's going to be a tremendous amount of insecurity as well. So those two things are pillars that we're going to talk about today: how to build more emotional and financial security into your personal and professional life. We'll give you some specific ideas around that. So here is what I call the law of success. And this is a definition of how we define success. Now, I'm going to do something here that may be a little bit risky, and I'm not sure that this is going to work. But in fact, you know what? I know it's not going to work, so I'm going to skip through that. I've got a video there, and I'm almost positive it's not going to broadcast. So let me just do the definition here. Here's how we define success, and I will give credit to this to a guy by the name of Earl Nightingale, who defined it this way years ago. And he's basically said that success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal, the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So success is a process. It's not an end result. It's not a specific endpoint, but it is an ongoing effort. An ideal is a standard, is a character trait. It's really a way of being. So if you keep that in mind, and I'd suggest you write that down and keep that as a good definition of what success is: the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Now contrast that to how we define accomplishment. So we define accomplishment as arriving at a predetermined destination. So if you set a goal and to arrive at a certain point in life, having accomplished specific things, then you can call that an accomplishment. So there is a difference between success and accomplishment. Success is really the bigger picture. Accomplishment are the things that you accomplish every step along the way. And important to differentiate between those two because they're not the same. Just because someone has earned a lot of money or has achieved some level of financial success doesn't mean that they are successful in life. It just means they've accomplished a financial goal. Success, again, is progressive and it's never ending. So these are 4 questions for any team member who wants to be successful. And many of you are familiar with these questions. And we started off the year in our Mentor of the Month program with these 4 questions. I repeated them at the annual event. I'm going to repeat them again today for any team member who wants to be successful. So here are the 4 questions. These will not be on the screen. I'm just going to mention them. So question number 1 for you to ask yourself is, do you have goals? Do you personally have goals? Question number 2 is, are your goals written down? Do you have them in written form? Question number 3 is, do you review them every day? Do you review your goals every day? And number 4 is, do you have them with you or someplace where you can see them on an ongoing basis? So, do you have goals? Are they written down? Do you review them every day? And do you have them someplace where you can physically see them on an ongoing basis? Now, there's something to each one of those 4 questions. And let me just mention a couple of highlights. One, obviously, we all need goals. I don't think we need to spend any time on that. The written part has a piece of psychology to it that I didn't totally understand until recently. There's a natural law called the law of integrity that says that we naturally want to be consistent with who we say we are. It's kind of a natural tendency. So when we write something down, then we have a tendency to want to be consistent with that. So if I write a goal down, then my mind automatically starts moving toward wanting to be consistent with that ideal. So that's the power of having it in writing. Review them every day because it doesn't take very long to get off track. And then finally, do you have them someplace where you see them on a daily basis is key for the reinforcement and the reminder. So suggestion and recommendation here, those 4 questions as a reminder is, if you want to be a successful team member, which I know everyone here does, then that's action item number 1. Get your goals down, update them, and make sure you have them with you. We actually sent out goal cards at the beginning of the year that you should have received from your dentist so that you could write your goals down. Here's an interesting study that was done at Dominican University in California recently, where they found that you have a 50% greater chance of accomplishing your goals if those goals are written. 50% better chance, which is pretty good odds. So that gives you the power, I think, in the reinforcement that writing it down, your personal and professional goals, gives you a 50% greater chance of accomplishment. Now here's the next part. You have a 100% better chance of accomplishment if they are written with weekly accountability. So to have an accountability partner with whom you're on the journey so that you report in on a weekly basis on your progress on those written goals, you have a 100% better chance if they're written and you have weekly accountability. So not only write your goals down, but find someone that can be your accountability partner with whom you check in at least once a week on your progress on each one of those goals. 100% better chance of accomplishing your goals if they're written and you have accountability. So those 2 things hopefully will give you the motivation and the vision to not only write them down, but to have some accountability every step along the way. Let me share with you a model that is very popular in the management and training arena that has to do with progress of any individual in any organization. Here's the model. You need skill. We all need to continually develop skills in order to be successful. So if you were to give yourself a rating on a scale of 1 to 10 on your skills for your particular job or what you want to do, you could give yourselves a rating. So you either would be score high in the skill area or low in the skill area, depending on the personal responsibility you've taken to develop yourself in those areas. Now, the other aspect is how motivated you are. So this is what we'll call will. So you could give yourself a rating on a scale of 1 to 10 of how much motivation you feel for your particular direction that you're taking now. So low will and high will, meaning low motivation or a high degree of motivation. So now let's take a look at how this plays out. If you score low in motivation, that you're not really that fired up about your job, and you score low in the skill area, you're not really that skilled at what you do, and you've fallen behind in your professional skills, then you're at low skill and low will. This is obviously not a good place to be. This would be the failure quadrant. And if there's low will and low skill, the only option is to recreate yourself, reinvent yourself, and examine, gee, what is it that I really want to do that would motivate me? What am I motivated by? Set some goals. Typically, we find people that with goals are a lot more motivated than those who are not. Set some goals in writing, get an accountability partner, and start working on your skills, the specific skills to accomplish those goals. So if you find yourself not real motivated, and you find yourself kind of lacking in the skill area, it is high time to reinvent yourself and get on it and get on a new program. Next, if you're low skill and high will, in other words, you have a lot of motivation, but your skill is lacking, this is what I call the rookie quadrant. So this is typically how a rookie feels when they first get on the team or they're first hired and maybe they don't have a lot of experience. They're highly motivated, but they still need a lot of skill. And so this is all about education, and practice, and about building that skill level. So if I'm highly motivated but don't have a lot of the skill, I would set some very clear goals around skill development and what I need to learn to do to be a more highly skilled team member in my particular area. Next would be somebody who's low will and high skill. So this is what I call the veteran quadrant. This is the tenured team member that has been on the job for several decades. They're very skilled at what they do, but maybe they've lost the passion for doing it. Not real motivated, but they know their stuff. So obviously the job here is to find new inspiration in what you're doing by perhaps developing a new skill, setting a new goal, finding a new aspect of what you do that will open up. I'm a big believer that one of the greatest motivators that we have in life is hope. And hope comes from having a goal or seeing a vision of something in the future and having a plan to get there. So in this area, if you're low will, it's primarily because you've kind of lost hope. You need a new vision. You need a new strategy. You need something to strive for that will increase the motivation. So if you're in the veteran quadrant, it's time for a little motivation. It's time to get a new vision and some new goals that will motivate you to move forward. Then finally, high skill and high will. So this is someone who's very skilled at what they do, and they're very motivated to do it. High skill and high will. And these are the ones that are those that we can delegate to, that have increased responsibility over time because they're moving forward and they're willing to increase their skill level. So obviously out of those four quadrants, to be a successful team member, whatever your position is, where we want to be is in that last quadrant. High skill, high will, so you can continue to grow and to develop. So wherever you land in those four quadrants, that should give you a roadmap for what you need to do. Whether you need to recreate yourself, reinvent yourself, whether you're a rookie in the educate quadrant where you need to increase your skills and set some goals around that. If you're in the veteran quadrant and you need a new vision and some new motivation, and set some new goals. Or if you see yourself in this last quadrant with high skill and high will, continue to set your goals and to move forward. Our objective, obviously, is to be in that quadrant of high skill, high will, and keep moving in that direction. So, as a summary, The will or the motivation comes from where you're going, where your vision is. The skill comes from how you get there. What are the skills you need to develop to get where you want to go? So both require a degree of work and goal setting and planning to develop in those two areas. So here's your first action item, is to create a personal written plan from moving you from where you are to where you want to go in the will and skill areas. So where do you want to be? Where are you today? And how are you going to get there? What's your vision? What are the specific skills you're going to develop? And what are you going to strive for? So that's action item number one. I'm going to have 3 of these today, but that's the first one, is to get that personal written plan down in writing. So obviously, if you're going to be motivated and you're going to be developing your skills, you're going to need to do that in a work environment. And team members succeed and thrive in a great work environment. I interview team members all the time. I've never met a team member who said, you know, work environment really doesn't matter to me. All I want is money, and as long as the pay is good, you know, abuse me all you want, it doesn't really matter. I've never met a team member like that. Everybody wants a great work environment. So if you want a great work environment, you have to create it, because a great work environment is created by every team member and their contribution to creating a good work environment. That is part of being a successful team member. So we have a term that we call culture. And culture is basically all of the elements of your work environment and what it's like to work there. And culture can happen by design or by default. We hope that you'll make it a culture by design. So here's an interesting definition from Clayton Christensen, who teaches at Harvard Business School. He says culture is the combination of priorities and processes and how an organization and the people in it act on them daily. So what are the priorities of the office, and what are the processes or the systems that you put in place to execute on those priorities? How do you work together as a team? Because your individual success is dependent to some degree on the team members with whom you work. Success is a team effort. So if you want to be a successful team member, it helps to be on a successful team with everyone working together. This is a model that some of you may be familiar with. This is what we call the culture cube. And this has to do with the culture that's created in any office. So it has 2 aspects to it: productivity, where your ability as a team to work together to accomplish an end result, and fulfillment. And that's essentially the emotional juice that you get out of what you do every day, the emotional juice. So productivity and fulfillment. So if we take a look at this like we did the previous model, if you're unproductive, you're not hitting any team goals, and you're not fulfilled, you don't get any emotional juice out of what you do every day, then you're probably broke and depressed. It's not going to last very long. That's the worst possible place you could be. If you're unfulfilled but highly productive, let's say your team is gunning it, you're busy all day, and you're accomplishing a lot, but you don't get any emotional fulfillment out of what you do, then you're going to be burned out, and it won't last very long. You've got to have some emotional income coming from what you do. If you're unproductive from a financial standpoint, but you love what you do, in fact, you do it for free if you have to, that's what I call charity. In other words, you're doing it for the love of doing it. You're not doing it just for financial gain. And then finally, when you're fulfilled and highly productive, that's when you're genuinely rich. In other words, rich emotionally, financially, and in every other way. You are genuinely what we would call successful. So you could probably measure yourself today and say, you know what, in all those 4 quadrants, here's where I am today. we obviously want to be in that last quadrant, the rich quadrant, where you're fulfilled and highly productive. And productivity comes from setting goals and knowing exactly where you're going to go and how you're going to get there. And fulfillment comes from doing something that you feel like has meaning, that makes you a better person and the people around you better as well. So again, our goal as a team, as a successful team, is to be in that last quadrant, fulfilled and highly productive. So here's an interesting culture case study. I shared this at the annual event, and it was one of the most highly rated things that I talked about at the annual event, so I chose to share it with you again for those who may not have heard it. So this culture study has to do with an organization that was broken, frankly, that had spent years in poor leadership and had a lot of bad habits and just frankly a very poor culture. A new leader was brought in to essentially recreate the organization. And one of the first things that he did was he set down a list of what he called cultural rules. And these basic cultural rules were these. He had a few of them. The first one was this, is be loyal to the leader. In other words, if you're going to be part of the organization, you need to be 100% loyal to the leader. You need to be in lockstep with where the leader is going. It's not fair to be on the team if you're not loyal to the leader. So that was rule number one. Rule number two was dump your junk. In other words, don't bring your old habits and your old culture from where you used to work, or maybe even things in the past. Don't bring that with you. This isn't the old place. This is where we're starting over with a clean sheet of paper, so don't bring your past baggage with you. Get involved in the new culture. Step number three is show respect. Show respect to leadership, show respect to your fellow team members, show respect to your patients and customers. Number four was show up for the important stuff. In other words, when we have team meetings, be there. When there are important meetings that you need to be present for, show up. And you know our mantra that we do a lot, which we say, if you're early, you're on time. When you're on time, you're late. And when you're late, you're lost. Show up for the important stuff that has to do with the team. Rule number five was respect others' roles and responsibilities. Support each other. Work as a team. You can't do it all. It takes a team. So be supportive and respect each other's roles and responsibilities. Rule number six was respect each other's livelihood. In other words, each person is there working to make a living, and be respectful of that, and don't do anything that would ever jeopardize someone's job or ability to make their living. Rule number seven was honor the relationships of others, meaning don't gossip, don't talk behind people's backs, don't tear them down. Honor those relationships that people have with each other and make them work. Rule number 8 was don't take what's not yours, pretty basic and fundamental. Rule number 9, tell the truth, don't gossip. And then rule number 10 was support and cheer each other on. So those were just some simple cultural rules that this particular leader put in place so that the culture could thrive and grow and be successful. Now, let's take off the cover here. Who was the leader? That leader was the ancient leader Moses, straight out of the Bible. Here's the rules. They were the 10 Commandments. Great rules for establishing a great culture. Rule number 1, respect the leader. There's only one leader. You're all familiar with the first commandment. Number 2 was no idols. When the children of Israel came out of Egypt, they came out of an idolatrous culture. So this was a reminder, don't bring the old culture with you, because it was known that it's hard to break those old habits. Rule number 3, don't take the name of the Lord in vain. In other words, show respect for leadership and for each other. Rule number 4, keep the Sabbath day holy. That is a sacred day in Israel. In other words, show up and respect the important stuff. Rule number 5, honor your father and mother. In other words, honor the roles that each individual has. Honor the roles and responsibilities that each person has in the organization. Commandment number 6 was don't kill. In other words, respect the livelihood of each individual and their right to make a living. Rule number 7, no adultery. In other words, respect the relationships that other people have with each other. Don't gossip, don't tear them down, don't do anything that would be damaging. Rule number 8, don't steal, don't take what's not yours. Rule number 9, no lying. In other words, don't gossip, don't say anything about others that's not true. And then finally, no coveting, meaning you don't go around wishing that you had somebody else's stuff and saying things that would destroy the organization. Isn't it interesting that in those 10 commandments are an example of the building blocks for a great culture? So along those same lines, as most of you are familiar, we have for years proposed for every team that wants to be successful and be filled with successful team members that you create your own version of those rules in what we call the culture guide. Now, the culture guide simply contains behavioral expectations that you have of each other. Those expectations might be as simple as being early. That when we meet together, we expect everybody to be there, be early, and be ready to go at attention at the designated hour. You can have all kinds of different cultural guidelines for your team that you review on a regular basis. So as a takeaway as a team, one, if you created a culture guide, congratulations. I hope you're reviewing it as a team on a regular basis. If you've never done that, could I suggest that you go to the crowncouncil.org website, and in the search bar, just search for Culture Guide, and you could download an example culture guide from the Crown Council website that will give you a starting point. You can simply edit the one that we have there. It's got some great things in it. Or you can write your own. But successful team members know how to work together and create the right kind of work environment. And it starts with having the right kind of culture guide so that everybody understands the behaviors that are expected from each other. So if you haven't done it, it is high time to create your culture guide, live by it, reinforce it, and use it on a daily basis. Let me tell you a quick story that many of you are familiar with. I've told this story a lot, so I'll probably retire this story soon. But it's about a characteristic of a successful team member. This is Jerry Rice, who most of you are familiar with. You're familiar with him in one of two ways, if not both. Jerry Rice is considered to be one of the most accomplished wide receivers in professional football history. He also was on Dancing with the Stars, so you've heard of him in one of those two places, if not both. But one of the great things about the stories that's told about Jerry Rice was his contribution as a successful team member as when he played professional football. Jerry would every season go into the new season with the attitude of a rookie. In other words, even if they had won the Super Bowl, he never went into training thinking, you know, I've got it made, I'm one of the best in the business, so I can slack. No, he worked diligently to always be the best. And what he said was he went into every season with the attitude that he had the very first season, that he had to earn his position, that he had to work hard to maintain that position and have earned the right to stay there moving forward. So I've always admired that character trait about him. If you've been on the job for a few years, what I'd ask you to challenge you to ask yourself is, do I have a rookie attitude? Even if your skill is high and your motivation is high, do I have a rookie attitude, meaning the energy and the desire to go and to accomplish and move through and make things happen? Or have I kind of slipped into veteran territory where I feel like I've earned my position and so I don't have to work as hard? Are you a rookie? And I hope you are, because successful team members maintain the attitude of being a rookie every day on the job. Their attitude is, I'm trying out for my position every day, and I have to earn my right to keep this position. So as an effort in these areas, as many of you know, we have created and worked with an organization to create a way to measure team member success and measure the success of the environment in which you work. It comes by way of a program called Culture Builder. And I'm going to walk through some of the basic fundamentals of Culture Builder. If you're using this already, stay tuned. I'm going to share with you some interesting applications. If you've never seen this before, pay very close attention. It is a very, very powerful tool that will help you become personally successful as a team member and help your team be more successful. Culture Builder is a software program online that allows you to do a number of things. Here shortly, you'll be receiving an email. If you attended this seminar or the webinar, you'll be receiving an email if you're not currently using Culture Builder that will get you started. I'll share with you exactly how that happens. So you can access Culture Builder at crowncouncil.org over on the right-hand side where that icon is, where it says Culture Builder. And then you'll have each individual, the team member and dentist, will have their own username and password. There will be, when you log in, there's going to be eventually some tasks that will be assigned to you. The first of which is going to be what we call the practice assessment. Now, the practice assessment is essentially your opportunity to give the practice some feedback on the work environment and the overall setup of the practice. You'll get an email that will give you a link to take the practice assessment. Once we've loaded all the team members in your office, loaded them in, then you'll automatically get an email that will generate a link that will take you to your organizational assessment. So you'll see this, you'll click Begin to take the practice. It's very simple. It has a series of questions by category where you can answer each one of these questions. So for example, our practice has a clear vision of what it wants to become. Do you strongly agree or strongly disagree or somewhere in the middle? So do you feel like you have a vision and a direction that's communicated on a regular basis? Okay, and then there's several other questions in the direction area. Organizational structure, some questions around that. Objectives, culture. In other words, there's multiple questions in each one of these areas. Now, all of your responses are 100% totally confidential. No one knows how you answered, and all of the results are collated and tabulated so that you can look at them as a team and see if how you're doing in each one of these areas. Okay? There's also some open-ended questions where you can write your responses. So once everybody has taken the practice assessment, then you get some feedback of your top scoring categories, the categories where you scored the highest, and your bottom scoring categories where you might need the most work. So then you'll be shown as a whole team the top scoring questions that everybody scored the highest, and your bottom scoring questions, the ones where everyone as a group tended to score the practice poorly, and then that gives you some areas that you can work on together as a team. It gives you very much some statistics and shows you how everything graphs out. It also compares how leadership answered the questions versus the rest of the team, so you can see if there's any disconnect there. And then it also lists all of the open-ended answers that were shared so you can actually see what the feedback is. Here's an interesting case study. This is a practice that took the organizational assessment some time ago. These are their top scoring questions where the team members rated the practice highly in these areas. Overall, our patients perceive that this company or this practice, they perceive it in a positive way. They get high marks. We deliver and provide great quality care, high marks. Our doctor really cares about customers or patients, very much high marks. I think we have a business model that makes sense and can be successful. So everyone felt like the practice was on a good track and had a good operating model. I understand how my position in the practice fits in and contributes to the overall practice. So everybody felt like that they pretty much understood their role and responsibility. Next, I clearly understand the goals and objectives that my doctor wants me to accomplish. So that's a direct leadership question. Next, patients recognize and appreciate the level of service we provide. I enjoy working here. I feel like I have a positive career path, and our practice will be very successful. So all very good, top-scoring questions that give you an idea of how the practice is going. Now, here were their bottom-scoring questions. And take a look at that. There's kind of a trend here. The doctor provides effective direction and guidance. So what was interesting about that, if you go to the previous one, they scored the doctor very highly in caring about customers, and that the business model made sense, and that they felt like their position fit in and contributes, and that they understood the goals and objectives that the doctor wanted the person to accomplish, but they didn't feel like they were getting effective direction and guidance. So that might seem a little contrary, but let's look where the trend is. The operating processes that have been developed are good processes. Interesting. So in the previous one, they felt like there were, the business model was good, but there's obviously some issues around the current processes being effective in the current environment. Communication from the doctor or other parts of the organization is effective. Interesting, some communication concerns. Overall, we have an effective organizational structure. Again, this might seem a little contrary because of the previous one. So, gee, we think our business model's good, but we're not so sure about the organizational structure. Everyone in our practice has clear roles and responsibilities. Issues there. We communicate effectively within our practice. The operating processes for our practice have been implemented effectively. The process to manage the data of our practice are clearly defined. Other members of our team understand how to manage their areas of responsibility, and job descriptions and responsibility make sense. So it's really interesting because there were some top scoring questions that seem to contradict the bottom scoring question. And what in this particular situation, when we sat down and looked at the results and then discussed it with the team, there were some clear issues that came up. This is a practice that had gone through a transition recently. One of the doctors had retired, and so there was kind of a new guard, new leadership. And so there were some questions about where the new leadership wanted to go. There were some questions about how effectively the day-to-day communication was going to go, and if the structure then was modeled or was working with the existing people that were there. So what this did was it opened up some dialogue for the whole practice to discuss what were the specific areas that needed improving as they moved forward with new team members and kind of a new structure. So it really helped facilitate a whole discussion on how to develop the practice. So here's some interesting just feedback from those that have used the organizational assessment. They felt it was easy, it was intuitive, very insightful. Felt like they got feedback on strengths, and the practice was able to develop an action plan. And their plan is to take the organizational assessment every 3 months or every quarter. So that is a way to measure and see the overall success of the organization, because every team member who's successful is ultimately going to work for a successful practice. So the next piece of Culture Builder is what we call the 360-degree feedback portion. And this is one that I'm very, very excited about. This is actually a Crown Council qualified member requirement that you do on a regular basis, 360-degree team evaluation. That's where every team member has an opportunity to give other team members feedback on how they're doing. So it's not just coming from the doctor, but it's coming from every team member in the practice. So in order to take this, it's set up where you can actually, once the team is loaded in, you can determine who gets to provide feedback to whom based on the proximity of their work together. You can do it in any number of different ways. You choose who gets to evaluate whom. Then once it's all set up, then you'll get an email again with a link to fill out that assessment. Now, we have put in, what we suggest is that you put in, and we can do this, your culture guide into this 360 as a way to measure individual performance in the culture guide, along with some other very skill-based questions. So you get an email, and then it gives you the opportunity to rate everybody in the practice on each question. So we just loaded some questions in here and some names of fictitious team members where you get to rate on a scale of basically 1 to 5, from never to always, in each of based on that question, and then leave any written feedback on the right as well. So depending on you, you can load in any questions you want for your 360-degree feedback. We like to use the culture guide as a way to do that. Then whoever's administering this will know when it's been completed. You'll have a team member ranking. Whoever's in management in the practice will be able to see how everybody ranked on these questions and how they ranked on each question. The top 5 questions, how everybody ranked, and the bottom 5 questions, how everybody ranked. So it gives you a lot of great information on the health of culture, what you're doing, and each individual's role in it. So at a point then, you'll get a report back individually on what your greatest strengths are, as well as where are the areas that you personally need to improve based on the feedback you received. And then you get to write your, you'll be given feedback on what changes you can make so that you can develop an action plan and new goals around the overall culture in the practice. Again, all the responses are anonymous. They're compiled so that you see the composite of all of the responses that you receive. So no one will ever know how you answered or evaluated someone else in the practice. But it's just a tool to help you get some feedback. It's really no different than getting up in the morning and looking in the mirror. You do that to get feedback. And you get that feedback because you want to see how you're doing. Well, this is the same way. You're getting feedback from your fellow team members to see how successful am I and what am I doing to be more successful. In addition, we are building and continue to build an entire library of skill-building videos that you can use to improve your motivation and your skill level in all of the areas that it takes to be a successful team member. So with that, here's the next action item. If your team has not yet engaged in Culture Builder, you'll be receiving an email with a roster for you to complete with all your team members' names and their email addresses. That's going to be coming this week. And if you'll get that filled out and back to us, then we will get your team signed on to Culture Builder so you can start using this as a success tool individually as well as a team. So here's the 3 summary action items that I promised you today. First, create your personal action plan with your goals, your vision, where you're going to improve your motivation and your skill. Number 2, create a practice culture guide. If you haven't already done that, download it from the Crown Council website and write your own culture guide with your team. Number 3, get started with Culture Builder. Send us back your roster so we can get you loaded into the system and get your team up and running with the whole Culture Builder program. It's one of the most powerful, robust programs to measure your culture and your own personal success in the practice. That's the goal. So If you have questions, you can either call the Crown Council office at 800-276-9658 or email success@crowncouncil.com. We'll be happy to field your questions. You will be receiving, if you haven't started already, you'll be receiving this roster by email. And the sooner you get it filled out for your practice, then the sooner we'll be able to get you on board with this great new program that will help you measure and improve your own success. So with that, I hope that's been helpful today, giving you some good action items and a vision for your own personal future success. With that, I think we're going to field questions. Greg?
Yes, I've got 3 very thoughtful questions. The first one is, I would define myself as being low skill and high will. I'm highly motivated, but I must work to support my family as a single mom. How do I build my skill while still having to work to support my family? There just aren't enough hours in the day. I feel trapped.
That's a really good question, and obviously very heartfelt. So here would be 2 things I'd recommend. One is to sit down and do a personal evaluation and ask yourself, what are the skills that I'm lacking in? What do I need to learn? What do I want to learn to progress? Then I would sit down with your leader or your dentist and show them the plan that you have written out for yourself, and then ask for some suggestions on how you might be able to build some skill in that area. Now, for example, if you're a dental assistant and you want to become a hygienist, well, obviously that might be a different conversation. But if there's skills that you're trying to develop within your area of expertise, then sitting down with your leader and expressing the desire to want to grow in some new areas in the office, together the 2 of you might be able to come up with a plan where you can expand your responsibilities or be taught some additional skills. So that is one. If it's going to be a big career change, then obviously that would be a whole different discussion with a whole different set of challenges. But for starters, I would definitely map out the plan of what can I do today, what skills do I need, and sit down with your leadership and ask for their help to expand your opportunities so you can learn to do more.
Excellent. Steve, second question. I am high skill and high will. The doctor is high skill and high will, but we can't get the rest of the team on board. How do we motivate the rest of the team? We've just finished a year of extensive coaching with little effect.
So good question, and this is what I would suggest here. It's time for a vision presentation by the doctor. In other words, if the doctor's highly motivated and highly skilled, then obviously the doctor has a vision and knows where he or she is going. My suggestion would be to sit down with the team and map out the vision for where you see the practice going, number 1. And then number 2, what it's going to require of each team member in order to get there. So what are the non-negotiables, the things that each team member is going to have to do in order to get the practice on track for the vision that you're trying to achieve? Then becomes the question. Once you mapped out the vision and what's required, then every team member has a decision to make. That decision is, am I willing to make the trip? Am I willing to do the things that are now being asked of me so the practice can grow? And that question can only be answered by each individual, but the expectations need to be very clear, and everyone needs to be given an opportunity to get on or get off. But the vision needs to be clear, and the requirements need to be absolutely crystal clear for everybody. Hope that helps.
Excellent. Third question. Our doctor is slow to adopt innovations like Culture Builder. Can the team do this without him?
So here's what I would say. And this is a good question. I appreciate that question. What I would suggest is go to your doctor today and mention the webinar and what you've learned today, and that you as a team would like to move forward and test this and see what kind of feedback that you can give each other and what it would tell you about the practice. If, for whatever reason, your doctor doesn't want you to do that, test it out, give us a call. Maybe we can help. But if you're unified as a team and say, hey, we'd really like to do this, we really want to get on board with this because we think it'll help all of us, I would hope that that every Crown Council member doctor would be on board with that, with a team who wants to grow and improve their skills and their teamwork. So go to your doctor as a team, and again, we're going to be sending you everything you need to get started. But if you have any problems there and it's not working, we'd be happy to resolve any concerns or objections that your doctor has about getting started. So just give us a call. Give that a shot. Very good.
Thank you,
Greg,
Steve. Outstanding work today. Nope.
Excellent.
Outstanding webinar. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for being with us today. And good luck on your action items. And we look forward to hearing back from you. We'll send you the roster for you to fill out so we can get you started with another great success tool from the Crown Council. Have a great day.
Thank you, Steve.